Hello, welcome to part 6 of building a beach buggy with me, Neil. Now, if you've been with us from the beginning, you'll know the score. If you haven't been and you've just stumbled across this video, go back and check out all the other bits first, and then you'll eventually make your way back to this one. If you have been with me since the beginning, or even watched the last video, you'll remember that I said I was getting pretty close to getting 1,000 subscribers, and we did it. Absolutely amazing. I never ever expected that to happen. So once again, thanks to everybody that subscribed, but please keep up the good work as far as sharing it on Facebook, Instagram, all that other stuff. So once again, thank you very much. In this episode, we've got some pretty major work to be done because we're finally going to be replacing the 2 floor pan halves, which is a giant milestone, a big thing that I've been looking forward to. The other thing we're going to do in this episode is make some sort of uprated gearbox mounts, like a central brace thing for the gearbox. If you're familiar with these things, you probably know what I'm talking about. If not, watch the video, it'll all make sense. The other thing we're going to do is just sort of do the final sort of tying up the little odds and ends before we finally get the chassis sandblasted. So hopefully by next episode that thing will be blasted, we'll get to start painting it and do all that good stuff, and then yeah, we're getting pretty close to starting to put things together instead of just chopping things off. So that'll be fun. That's enough of my talking, let's get stuck in. So yeah, we're going to pick up where we left off and get some floor pans in. Right, we're finally at the day we get to bang the floor pans in. That's an exciting one. I did a little bit on these, I think it was in the very first video. They're from another UK company, Flat Out Customs, and these things are a revolution as far as buggies go. As I explained in the other video, years ago people would have to try and modify the Volkswagen floor pans, which they were full of lumps and bumps and stamping marks and stuff like that, and you had to chop them into about 25 pieces to disguise where all those joins were, and even then you had to be a seriously good metal worker to do it so that nobody could see where the join was. So Flat Out Customs stamped these things out. Oh, nearly dropped it. We got much more simple sort of mouldings in them, which it just looks so much neater. It's nice and flat all the way across. Really nicely made pieces, but they don't just weld in, they don't fit. The reason for that, it's not a mistake, they give you a little bit extra all the way around so you can sort of trim them down to fit. You see how much over we are at the front there. So these things are going to take a little bit of trimming down to fit. They've been sat around in my shed for quite a while, so they got a nice amount of surface rust on them there. Is that going to fall? No, we're good. So just going around with the old stripper disc in the grinder again, just to clean up this edge. Already done a couple of trial fitments with this one. Certainly need to trim a bit off this inside edge here. One thing I like to use for stuff like that is fine line masking tape. You know, you get to, as long as you pull it nice and tight, you get a dead straight line and a real nice solid line to sort of trim to work to. Because it's all well and good putting a pen line there, but then you go, oh, was it that side of the pen line or was it that side? It ends up getting rubbed off, worn out. So this is a really nice way of getting a good sharp line to mark to. So now we've got the sort of tedious and time consuming job of trial fit, trim a bit off, trial fit, trim a bit off, because it's obviously a lot easier to take material off than it is to put it on. So that's what the next few hours are going to be. Tedious, but we can live with that, it'll be worth it. Well, after lots of time, probably about 3 hours, we got the first one all trimmed up, and look at that, dropping in there, fitting like a glove. Happy with that. See, we're super tight all the way around. by the time we're drilled and plug welded, this is all going to be held down tight. We've got all our gaps as good as they can possibly be. So now, just got to do the same for the other side. I'll see you in another 3 hours. They fit. Result. That's both of them all trimmed up, fitting absolutely as good as they possibly could. Yeah, good few hours in that, but totally worth it. And in case you're wondering how much I did have to trim off the sides, the workshop floor was clean before I started, because I have a clean up after every day that I work in here. I have a reset, put all my tools away, and I've just swept the floor, and all of this is from the work that I've done today. So these are obviously the little sort of slivers that I've cut off the edges. So even though that piece is only probably 1/8 of an inch wide, that piece has probably had 1/4 of an inch removed off the panel. And because I've had to do it just that tiny little bit at a time to make sure it fits as it should, the result is loads of this stuff everywhere. But part of that result is also having floor pans that fit absolutely like a glove. So couldn't be happier. Hats off to Flat Out Customs. Amazing product. So next on the list is the thing you've seen me do a dozen times already, which is going to be drill a whole bunch of holes, plug weld it all down, and yeah, we're getting somewhere. Another step closer to getting it all sandblasted. So they required, you know, minor working to get them to fit. So bit of trimming, a little bit of hammer and dolly work and things like that to get everything all lined up perfect. But yeah, pretty chuffed with that. Next. Alright, it's time to drill some holes. So the black line there is obviously, I climbed underneath and just ran a Sharpie line around it so I can see how big my my little flange is there to oversail things by. Its narrowest point anywhere on the floor pan is 12 mil. So obviously we want the hole to be halfway across that. Half of 12 is 6 mil fine line tape. Run a bit of that around the edge. That's just a really easy way of getting a nice even margin all the way around it. So nice bit of tape all the way around the outside. Done that on both of them, and now just going to run along with the old tape measure there and just put a pen mark. I've decided to go every 30 mil. So what we're going to do is an 8 mil hole every 30 mil all the way around. So going to do a few laps with the old pen, a few laps with the drill, and then we can weld them in. Well, it's time. They're going in for the final time. I'm excited about this. Now, obviously part of the trick here is going to be forcing this down so that it makes good contact with that, so that we haven't got a gap in between our two pieces, you know. Unfortunately, we're a bit too deep there to get a clamp in, so we're going to use the probably unorthodox but highly effective broom handle jammed against a garage door opener method. Oh, look! Perfection! Right, let's do some welding. Yes! They're in, and they're not coming out. That's what we like. See, we're all plug welded. I haven't been too fussy about making sure that they're all uniform, because I'm going to be sanding the tops off anyway. Obviously the goal is to get things connected nice and strong, so I know I've got really good penetration through there to the other side, and this thing is solid as a rock. So now I've got all these little edges and bits around here to do, which is going to be the old tack, the boring bit. So I won't bother filming that, but that's a huge step getting those in and knowing that they're staying in. Happy with that. Okay, we've done a bit more welding around all these corners, sanded off all the tops of these, so you can still just about see the evidence of where they were. That lets me know that I've sanded it just enough, because where I see people go wrong a lot of the time on things like this is they think you have to keep digging at it until these things completely disappear, which you don't need to, because the issue there is this stuff is pretty thin. So obviously the more you sand on it, without realising it, you end up going through the thickness of the entire material. That ends up wafer thin. So I'll go down just enough so you can just see where they were. That lets me know that I haven't gone too far, and the evidence that is there, by the time that's got a couple of coats of epoxy primer and it's going to be like a textured black top coat on top of that, those will pretty much disappear. And even if they don't, it looks just like the factory spot welds do. So that's exactly what we're looking for there. Once again, everything's covered in dust and crap because I had to sand it all down and it makes nothing but mess. But we're getting there. We're really getting there. Right, once I got the floor pans in, I decided to do something which I wasn't planning on doing from the outset, but the more I looked at it, the more it seemed like a good idea. Turned the thing upside down and completely seam welded that joint. Now, as you've seen, normally it would just be floor pan on top of that little flange there, flange, and then it gets plug welded through, and you just have a smear of seam sealer on the underside to stop any corrosion from forming in there. But the more I looked at it, it was all in bare metal anyway. I thought I might as well just run all the way around the perimeter, totally seam weld it. That way it does an even better job of keeping the corrosion at bay, and it makes things stronger. So win-win as far as I'm concerned. You can just call me Captain Overkill from now on, because yeah, wasn't necessary, but it's made for a better job, so no regrets. Next. Another thing that we can delete are these 3 holes here on either side. These are body mounting holes for when it was a Beetle. This thing's never going to be a Beetle again, and the buggy only uses the holes from sort of here rearward, so time for those to go. There we go. Holes no more. Okay, next up we're going to do some work on the gearbox mounts, or the transmission brace, whatever you want to call it. As I've said from the outset, these aren't how-to videos, it's just me showing you how I'm doing things. It's my opinion that if you're going to run one of these cars with a, you know, either a standard Beetle engine or even something that's hopped up slightly, putting out a bit more power, you don't need to worry too much about bracing things, especially on a street car. Saying that, this is a street car, but the engine we're going for is going to have, you know, not a horrific amount of power, but substantially more than it was ever designed to handle. So part of that is to try and brace things, stop things from moving around so much. So you can buy a central brace for these gearboxes, these transmissions, that it sort of clamps around it and then clamps around the chassis either side. I'm sure they do a fine job of steadying things up a bit, but in my opinion they just look horrible. They look like an add-on, they look like an afterthought. Seeing as we're building this thing from scratch anyway, why don't we try and do something that actually looks nice and also, you know, serves a purpose. I've got some uprated front and rear mounts. So already that's going to stiffen things up quite a lot, but this central support is really going to help with the, you know, the torque of the thing, and try and stop things from twisting about too much. So speaking of gearbox mounts, mine are currently down at the lockup, so let's head down there, go grab those, and then see what we can come up with for a gearbox brace. Right, we're down at the store. All these boxes, that's all bits that I've either taken off the chassis or bits that I've bought to put on it. It's all stashed down here out of the way. That's what we came down here for today, some gearbox mounts. And I like coming down here because it's where that lives. You see it? And also where that lives. And yeah, I've got piles of buggy bits here. Oh, I wonder what that is in there. You'll have to guess what that is. We've got a windshield up there as well, but like I say, gearbox mounts, that's what we came in for. Stop getting distracted, come on. All right, I've temporarily chucked the gearbox back in the car so that I can make this sort of central gearbox brace mount, whatever you want to call it. So put the gearbox in. We got a brand new cradle there from MP, and some Rhino mounts from CB Performance, which are, you know, sort of uprated, stiffer mounts for if you're running a bit more power than a standard motor. These are a good idea. You can go completely solid mounted without any rubber mountings in between the cradle and the gearbox, but then that transfers all your engine vibration and everything through the chassis of the car. That's race car stuff, whereas this is obviously a street car. So standard mounts would be too soft, fully solid would be too stiff. These are a good sort of halfway house. So the plan here for our central support, going to make a stainless steel plate which picks up on these little sort of ears on the gearbox there that you'll see. So what I've done is just clamped a piece of wood across the top, squared everything up. The way I like to do stuff like this is make a good template with nice square corners, so I've got something to reference to. I can make sure it's all straight and true. And then I've got a hole there to pick up on the top, and I've just cut sort of like a radius which clears the gearbox by quite a good way there. And then what I'll do is basically add in pieces of masking tape, add bits in until that we're the exact sort of shape and profile that we need, and I know it's going to clear everything that it needs to. So that's the easy way I find of doing it. And then we're just going to mount some weld some steel mounts onto there. So this is obviously a bolt-on application, but as I get a bit further through this, it should make a lot more sense, and you'll figure out what I'm getting at. There we go. Does that make sense? So now we take that, patchwork quilt of mess, and then transfer it onto a nice new piece, and then I can make another template which is going to be hopefully pretty close to fitting. Right, we've been through a few versions there, you'll see, until I've ended up with the shape that I'm happy with, which is that. So you see it's quite an unusual shape, but I think that's the way to make it look the best. It's when you're doing stuff like this, it's, you know, it would have paid to, you know, pay attention in your technical drawing classes at school, which I definitely didn't do, but I can usually make stuff like this easily enough. So now we've got the shape. The idea is to transfer it onto that piece of 6mm stainless steel, which again, totally overkill, but I don't care, it'll look cool. Yes, it would be nice if I had access to a water jet or a plasma cutter or something like that to cut this out, but you'd be amazed what you can get done with a grinder, a whole stack of cutting discs, a whole stack of flat discs. And the idea of me doing stuff like this way is to show you sort of what you can do with some pretty basic tools. Yeah, I could have done a CAD drawing of it and added water jet cut and it would have been perfect, but it doesn't have that, I don't know, sounds stupid, but it doesn't have that sort of soul, that feeling that a handmade part does. So even though there's a more efficient way of doing it, I like to do it my way, in my shed, with my tools. I don't have to bring in anybody else's help. All it costs me is time, and then I can have a part that I can truly call my own. So yeah, I'm waffling on a bit because I'm just putting off cutting this out because it's going to make a right mess, but here we go. Okay, we've yanked the gearbox out again, got it on the bench. The reason for that is we need to get these studs out. Yeah, they're not bolts, it's a threaded stud, goes all the way into that lug there. So just need to change those for longer ones. So the best way to get them out, I find, is put another nut on top of it and then nip this one up on top. Well, I say nip it up, you've got to absolutely crank it up as tight as you dare so that it doesn't slip. So you want to try and get it so that the flats line up. Oh, just like that. And that's proper tight. Then get the trusty impact on there, and then just give it a couple of blips, try and ease it out. Don't do it with a flat battery though, that would be stupid. Come on, baby. Another flat battery, what the? Get out of here. Fresh from the charger. Come on, play the game. There we go. Easy as that. Right, after loads of cutting and sanding and drilling and all that good stuff, we've got a nice nice stainless steel plate there to be this central brace for the gearbox. Obviously this needs to link onto the frame horn, so what I've got are these little polyurethane bushes with a little steel sleeve inside. What I normally do when I need stuff like this, if I just search eBay for, say, polyurethane bush, it comes up with all sorts of different options, and what we ended up with is, what were they for? They're alternator adjuster for a Saab 900 of all things. So never thought we'd be running Saab parts on this thing, but there we go. So I just need to get like a piece of tube to weld to the frame here so that we can obviously have a bolt-on application. I had a little sift through my drawer of round bits and bobs here before, thinking I'd have to get a piece of round bar and bore the middle out and everything else. Then I found that nice bit of CDS left over from when I built the hardtail bit for my Triumph. So pretty much exactly the right size. Just need to scoop a tiny little bit out the inside diameter, so that will save us a bit of time. So that's next. But first things first, I'm going to finish my ice cream before it melts. Mmm. There we go, that's a couple of them made. So, yeah. Oh, that's nice and satisfying. That goes there. That goes in the middle. Yeah. There we go. So now, just need to find a way of welding those on so that it looks all neat and tidy, even though no one's ever going to see it. Alright, I've sliced up a couple of bits of 3mm mild steel, clamped them up in this little jig setup I've just knocked up here so that I can hopefully get a nice smooth bend in this in one hit. Let's have a go. Not bad. Workable. Okay, we're getting somewhere with the shape of these things now, because you know there's a lot of angles involved here, so it ends up a bit of a funny shape. Lots of trial and error going back and forth trying to make it fit, but that's fitting pretty nice now, so that if I just put a straight edge across there, it just sort of flows into there nicely. So when that's welded on, it sort of looks like it was made to fit. I'm going to box in either side as well for added strength, but yeah, we're getting there. A bit more trial and error, a bit more shaping. Got the other side to do yet, but it's the way to do it. It's easy to, you just want to get stuck in and just get it on and weld it, but here's where I like to take the time with just tweaking things and shaving a little bit off at a time until they really fit how they should. Right, these are now in their final position. What I did to make sure they're as straight as possible is just put one tack on the middle on the outsides, with everything as aligned as I could get it with the gearbox in, then carefully slid the gearbox out while making sure I didn't disturb these, didn't knock them, and then just got this piece of nice big thick aluminium angle and then clamped it on either side, which just tweaks them into perfect alignment to make sure they're perfectly sort of parallel with each other. I've busted out the TIG welder for this one because it's, you know, it's a lot more precise. Obviously, if you've been watching up until now, you've seen that I've MIG welded pretty much everything. The MIG welding is great for just, you know, big, strong, steaming stuff up. When you want to be a little bit more precise in these sort of small, finicky little areas here, there's no competition. The TIG is the way to go. So TIG welding's a lot more difficult, but for this sort of thing, like I say, no competition. So what I need to do now is make some pieces to box these in. And then we've got our little tubes to weld in as well. So the plan is, even though these are tacked in position, they will be removed again. I just tacked them in place so that I can get these parts made and fit in as well as possible. Then I can take them off, finish weld everything on the bench, and then weld them back on the car. So quite a lot of back and forth on this sort of thing, but when alignment is so critical, which it is on this sort of thing, it's just the way it goes, but that's all right. It's all good fun. Next up, I've got to cut some little bits of 3mm plate there so we can box in the front and back sides of this. Now, a really easy way I find of doing templates for stuff like this is I just stuck some 2-inch masking tape across the face of it and then sort of added pieces in along the bottom edge there so that it sort of meets that curve. And then that, a tool which not enough people have got in their toolbox, I use this thing all the time. Nice sharp blade in it. You can literally just run it around the inside there, trim out that little piece of masking tape. So we've got front left and rear left, so obviously we'll just flip it for the other side because they're symmetrical. So that's a really accurate way, I find, of making small fiddly templates. There, so that's obviously cut some more bits of 3mm plate there, tacked them all together, so that one is tacked and ready to finish weld. So it's made up of a number of pieces there, but once that's all sanded up and cleaned up, you end up with, you know, that looks like it's milled out of a solid piece, which is exactly what we're looking for. Obviously it's not a solid piece, it's completely hollow, but that's turned out pretty damn nice. So now all I have to do is the same for the other side, then they can be welded on the car. So, you know, that on there, blooming lovely. We like that. There, we're back in position, tacked in place, done the old straight edge trick again, clamped them all up, jigged it all up, made sure everything's as straight as possible, exactly where they should be. Now I can finally weld them in place. Nice. There we go, we are in. So that's those welded in. I'm pretty sure that is the majority of the welding done now. There's going to be a few other little odds and ends. What I want to do now is just take my time, go around the entire car and just do silly little things like where this tab is for the brake hose. So it's all a bit lopsided and wonky, so if I just round over these corners nicely and just, you know, smooth out any dodgy bits from the mass production of the chassis being originally made. So I think it's doing the little bits and bobs like that are going to make it just, you know, not just fairly decent, I think they'll make it pretty good. So going to spend a few hours doing all that stuff, then we can finally get her sandblasted. That'll be nice. Okay, that's where we're going to call it for part 6 of building a beach buggy with me. We made some great progress this time, got those floor pans in, we're pretty much ready to get things sandblasted. We're not quite ready to get it blasted yet. I want to go around and just neaten up all the little odds and ends, little casting marks and things like that. Just smooth things over, round them over, a little bit hammer and dolly work. I've already address the front and rear corners of those floor pans where they meet the existing metalwork, just to try and make things look like they were done from the factory, or to be honest, a little bit better than they would have been done from the factory. So that's the idea. Yeah, and by the time I finish doing that, we're going to get it blasted and painted, which you should hopefully see in the next episode. So I'll leave you with that. If you've been watching these videos up until now, you know the score. You know that my Instagram is Neil of Steel with underscores in between, and as always, thanks for the 1,000 subscribers. That is absolutely amazing. But please don't let that stop you from sharing this stuff. You know, share it on Instagram, Facebook. Tell your mates about it. You know, that's how to get the word out about these things. And yeah, the better it does, the more inclination I've got to carry on doing it. So I will see you next time on Building a Beach Buggy with me. You know what to do. Go out in the garage, go make something, go play with your bicycle. If you haven't got a garage or a bicycle, go play with some Lego or something. Basically, if it's got wheels, that means you can muck about with it. And that to me is what life is all about. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Building a Beach Buggy. See you later.